homies. So we're back for an update for weekly boss progression. And I'm just going to go over the gear, go over what I have in my notes, and also talk about what bosses I do so far. So on my arc, I was able to clear up to Siva last week. And I thought, it was going pretty quickly, so why not limit test some of the other bosses? So this week I gave CPAP and Akechi a try. Unfortunately, I wasn't very comfortable with CPAP, so I didn't clear. But for Akechi, I was able to clear that in about 5 minutes with my G skills and fame buff, so that was fairly comfortable. I may give CPAP another try next week, but in terms of time spent, I spent 25 minutes to clear all my bosses on my arc, and that earns me about let's see, that earns me about 560 mil. So that's pretty efficient so far. In terms of nodes, I haven't made any upgrades to the nodes. The stat itself on my arc is relatively the same as last week, but I would say it's nice to make a little bit more progress in bossing on here. So the next step would be to do CPAP and then Enlo main on my arc. I do want to get the Arcane Force a bit higher, but I still have to push levels for that before I even do that. As you can see, my nodes are still fairly low, just because I don't really have many nodes to fund on my bossing mules, but that's fine. I'm still able to clear some bosses anyway. So the next character would be my Pathfinder. So my Pathfinder was clearing similar bosses as my arc. After I was able to clear Akechi on my Pathfinder, I thought, why not clear or attempt to clear Akechi on my Pathfinder as well? So my Pathfinder took a bit longer than my arc to clear, but it ended up still being able to clear. So here are the nodes that I run with, as well as the current static gear. So compared to my arc, who spends 25 minutes to clear all the bosses, my Pathfinder ends up spending 28 minutes to clear all the same bosses. And I would say that's pretty good use of my time still. So in terms of familiars so far, my all my bossing mules have 2 familiar slots open. I tried to get both of them as 15% IED fams, just to make sure I can get my IED up to do my bosses. I did fix some of my gear on my Pathfinder. I believe last week it was 12-star epic, and I was able to fodder in some gears to get it to 15 stars. There was a 30% off event recently, so I thought why not just push a little bit. It actually didn't cost me too much to do, and I mean, it still helped me do all the bosses I wanted to do, as well as getting Fairy Heart, which I think I had last week as well. The Fairy Heart was from the last event. So next on my list are new characters I started bossing this week. So this week I started bossing on 3 new characters. The first one was my Hoyoung, which I did push levels on. So last week my Hoyoung I believe was 210. And I ended up pushing it to 217, just doing one quick totem. I dropped a few nodes on my Hoyoung. I think I spent about 100 nodes just to see if I can find perfect trios. So I ended up being able to boost my humanity boost skill to 40. So I just have sort of 4 perfect trios on here that sort of mix and match what I wanted to have. I do want to unlock more slots soon to get at least a 220, but I'll do that when I have more time to train my Hoyoung. But it's in a comfortable spot. I do use G skills, so I usually just use the crit damage and damage percent buffs. In terms of how I cube my characters, I just go through my Meister cubes and Master Craftsman cubes that I get through my weekly bossing from my strongest 4 characters that do have drop gear. So that usually helps me get a long way. I don't plan to do DMT on my characters. I might do it just for the gloves, just to get 8% crit damage, but I'll consider that when DMT does happen for me. So just hopping onto my Hoyoung, I spent about 30 minutes to clear all the bosses up to C-Vel. So that earns me 716 mil. So the main thing about my Hoyoung was that I just hit 5 set absos on this past week. So that was pretty big gains to get, the 5 set abso bonus. Before that, I think I only had 2 or 3 pieces. It was a mix of just doing Scrapyard and Dark World Tree dailies, as well as a little bit of luck from HL main carries. So the next character is my Dark Knight. And my Dark Knight's actually on par to my Hoyoung at the moment. So it clears all the same bosses all the way up to C-Vel. I spent the exact same amount of time, about half an hour. I do realize I didn't spend all my hyper skills at that point, so I do need to fix that. I'll do that the next time I do my bossing. So my nodes on here are fairly low, but I'm running a single Dark Knight trio, which just has the 3 primary skills I want to work with. And I do want to push levels on here to put back either my Radiant Evil or just so I have a bit more damage. Instead, I opted in for Herder Nova just so I could bind the bosses. Main thing about all my bossing mules is that I'm just aiming for unique 2-line. Generally, with my characters, I sort of aim for my CRAs first to try to get those to 16, as well as my weapon. And then depending on how lucky I get with some of my other gear, I do plan to slowly get my absos to 15, but my WSE is generally the first thing I try to cube. I do have my superior earrings in here. But I do swap to this reinforced earring just for the foresight bonus. Until I get a sub belt drop, I generally just boss with these reinforced earrings instead. I was just using the superior earrings just to have, just to test my culvert score. So the next character is actually my Terror Burn. It was a Buccaneer. I am still working a lot on my Buccaneer because I do want to get it to 220, and the Terror Burn giving me a lot of nodes actually helped me get my perfect trios. I did use Miracle Circulators to roll for my middle line. I ended up with crit rate. I wasn't quite aiming for that. I was just hoping for passive +1 before the honor event. Just something decent, anything settleable. And right now, I clear up to 3 doors on my buck. It takes about half an hour. I can do C-Vel I ended up not doing C-Vel this week because I got carried to get the CRA weapon to transfer it into my Absolab weapon. So I'll give C-Vel a try next week. In terms of my gear, it's mostly 12-star epics, except my CRAs and my weapon. As well as my black bean mark, which I was lucky to get on my first run. So what I do plan to do on my buck next is to do some more Dark World Tree and replace that shoulder with an Absolab shoulder. And eventually, depending on how lucky I am with the next set of H-low main I'm running on, I may or may not have this 5 set. Or I'll just end up doing scrapyard dailies until I finish the other 2 items, my cape and my shoes. So once I am able to clear C-Vel, I should be able to earn almost 600 mil a week on this character. But for now, since I only do up to 3 doors, it's 500 mil. I'd say overall, I've made a good amount of maces. I should be earning about 10.5 mil maces and not cap on crystals. And whatever crystals I have remaining, I just sell daily boss crystals. Usually the 12 to 13 mil crystals. And given that I should have quite a few slots open, that can range anywhere from a few hundred mil earned. So it'll get me to almost 11 bill earned from bossing mules per week on top of my totems. The only other character that I've done a little bit of bossing is my Night Lord. So my Night Lord, the only boss I do on that is Easy Cygnus, just because I know it can quickly burst Easy Cygnus down in under a minute. In terms of nodes, they're all level 1 plus slot enhancements. I do have my superior gear on here, which I'm waiting to do foddering into them, but I don't want to spend the maces on them at the moment. Until then, it's still running 2 event rings and 2 start forcing rings. I still have to tier up the gear, but I haven't spent the time on it. I have a 16-star weapon, and my CRAs are 16 stars as well. Well, at least the hat. My fodder gear, I generally try to aim for 16 if I can. And then since I was able to get an HMAG carry, I'm using a Tyrant Cape instead of Pencilier Cape, but I do have a Zac Cape prepared for when I get Absolab Cape on here. That's pretty much it. Those are all my bossing mules for now. Hoping to push a few more characters with their Absolab gear next week. So it'd be my Night Lord, my Buck, maybe my Shade. Still not sure if I want to bring back my Lara into bossing, but some people have been trying to convince me. And we'll see how that goes. All right, thanks for watching. See you guys next week. Bye, homies.